December 19, 1944, 22,000 feet over Germany. Captain Thomas Reed's P-51 Mustang trips white smoke dropping. Four Messerschmitt 109s circle above with predatory patience. Wolves scenting blood in frozen air. Radio crackles. Lieutenant Parker's voice carries panic he cannot quite control. Lead is hit. Lead is trailing smoke. Reed's going down. The Germans see exactly what they expect to see. Easy kill, damaged American fighter, isolated from formation. No altitude advantage, no mutual support, just crippled aircraft spiraling toward Earth, trailing white vapor that marks death approaching. They roll in for attack with confidence, born from months of experience. This is what they do. This is what works every time. Attack the wounded, finish them quickly, move to next target before escorts can react. Efficient, professional, deadly. Lead Messerschmitt closes distance with mechanical precision, 400 yards. 300. Reed's Mustang continues shallow dive, wallowing through air, uncoordinated, wings rocking slightly, looking exactly like panicked pilot fighting damaged aircraft. 200 yards. German pilot's gun sight settles on smoking American. Finger tightens on trigger. He anticipates the kill, anticipates adding another silhouette to his fuselage. Another small victory in defense of fatherland that grows smaller every day. Then everything changes in ways German pilots will not understand until far too late to matter. The smoke stops as if cut by invisible switch. Engine stabilizes from rough to smooth in single heartbeat. Wounded bird transforms into hunter, with violence that seems to violate physics itself. Reed moves with precision that looks like magic, but is actually mathematics applied perfectly under pressure when it matters most. Full throttle, Merlin engine screaming from idle to war emergency power in span of 2 seconds. Hard left brake pulling 6 Gs. Mustang snaps around, energy exploding back into airframe. Germans committed too fast. Closure rate too high for human reaction time to compensate. They overshoot into firing solution that did not exist 3 seconds ago, into geometry that should be impossible, but is actually just physics understood completely. Reed rolls inverted with control so smooth it looks rehearsed, pulls through vertical, slots behind trailing Messerschmitt with gun sight centered on cockpit. 1 burst, 2 seconds of firing, point-blank range where missing is harder than hitting. Canopy shatters into 1,000 glittering pieces. Metal tears. Systems fail, aircraft rolls left, trailing smoke and glycol and fragments of German pilot's last surprise breath. Falls away spinning toward Earth 8 miles below. Second German brakes hard trying to climb out. Using vertical energy his aircraft does not possess. Reed does not follow because following wastes fuel and time and ammunition. Noses down instead. Accelerates back to formation speed. Extends away into winter sky. German climbs alone and confused, wondering what just happened. When he levels out 30 seconds later, searching for American who should be falling, Reed is already gone. Vanished back into formation as if nothing occurred. As if 4 Germans did not just encounter something they were not trained to defeat. But Reed is not finished with this particular dance of death in mathematics. 2 more 109s are regrouping to the east, reforming after initial attack on bombers. He climbs into winter sun. Throttle still at maximum continuous power, altitude building steadily through thin cold air, then runs the trick again but with variation this time. Does not just fake damage, fakes panic itself, breaks away from Parker diving erratically as if he has lost situational awareness completely, as if he is terrified young pilot who does not know where he is or what to do next. Wings rocking violently, nose wandering. Every movement screaming confusion and fear. Germans see exactly this. Separated American, confused, frightened, already beaten before fight even starts. 3 peel off from formation, close fast with focus that comes from certainty of easy victory. Reed lets them come, measures their speed with eyes that see numbers instead of just aircraft, measures their angle with mind that calculates intercept geometry automatically. Measures their commitment with understanding born from watching Germans hunt for 6 months, learning their patterns, understanding their psychology, knowing exactly when aggression overrides caution. At 400 yards, he pulls into climbing spiral, engines screaming protest at demands being made beyond normal operating limits. Lead German follows because his training says follow damage prey. His instinct says easy kill waits ahead. His experience says Americans panic when separated and frightened Americans die quickly. Other two try cutting him off using bracket tactics that work against normal pilots, flying normal profiles. Standard Luftwaffe doctrine executed with professional skill. Reed rolls out at apex of climb, inverts until world is upside down, dives straight back through them head on. Closing speed exceeds 1,000 miles per hour. Insane by any normal measure. Suicidal by doctrine standards. Also perfect geometry if you understand physics completely. He fires. Lead 109 explodes into orange fireball that marks winter sky with violence. Reed does not pull up. Keeps diving straight through expanding debris field, threading needle between other two Germans who scatter on pure survival instinct. Training abandoned in face of impossible maneuver. One breaks left, other breaks right. Both reactions predictable because both based on same training from same doctrine. Reed chops throttle, extends flaps despite airspeed that makes this dangerous. Whips Mustang around in turns so tight, his vision grays at edges from G-forces. Blood draining from brain toward feet. Pulls lead on left-hand German with a deflection, shooting his gunnery instructor said was impossible without years of experience. Fires, strikes engine cowling, punctures cooling system. 109 rolls over trailing fuel mixed with glycol that will ignite in seconds when hot engine parts meet flammable liquid. Last German runs, does not look back, does not try to fight, does not attempt to help wingman, just runs east toward home and safety, and the understanding that he just encountered something outside his experience, something that does not fit patterns he was trained to recognize. Reed does not chase because chasing is what aggressive pilots do, and aggressive pilots burn fuel on targets already defeated. Retracts flaps, checks fuel gauges with mechanical precision, climbs back to altitude where Parker waits, looking like he has witnessed miracle or madness, or perhaps both simultaneously. 4 confirmed kills. 2 minutes elapsed time. Perhaps 90 seconds if measured precisely from first German's decision to attack until last German's decision to run. Parker is shouting over radio something about impossible, and how did you and what just happened, but Reed barely hears, is already calculating fuel burn rate, ammunition expenditure, energy states throughout engagement, mental notebook filling with observations that will become report that will change how entire Air Force fights when someone finally believes mathematics works better than courage alone. At debriefing that night, gun camera footage will roll in complete silence. Intelligence officer will count kills frame by frame. Will confirm them with expressions suggesting he is not entirely sure whether to believe evidence his own eyes are showing him. Squadron Commander Major Harrison will watch without speaking. When footage ends, he will ask single question. What happened out there, Captain? Reed will answer in voice that sounds like he is discussing engineering problem, not aerial combat. Will say he exploited energy advantage and predictable enemy response patterns to perceived vulnerability. Harrison will nod slowly, will understand perhaps 10% of what Reed just said, will not ask more questions, will just say write it up. Procedures, setup, execution. I want it typed and on my desk tomorrow morning. 3-page report will result, titled in engineer's precise language, Exploitation of Predatory Instinct in Enemy Fighter Tactics. Will lay out mathematics, will describe psychology, will include diagrams showing energy states and closure rates and overshoot geometry, will reference test flights, Reed conducted using friendly aircraft as simulated aggressors, will not mention he built smoke generator himself from spare parts, will not mention he tested it flying alone at night over North Sea. Some details better left unstated when trying to convince skeptical commanders that unconventional tactics based on engineering principles actually work under combat conditions. But understanding how this moment came to be requires going back further than December morning over Germany. Requires understanding boy who built wind tunnels during Depression, engineering student who thought combat was applied physics, quiet pilot who watched and calculated while others fought and died. Requires understanding that some warriors win through strength and others win through understanding. And that understanding, applied precisely under pressure, can be more lethal than courage or aggression or natural talent combined. Thomas Reed grew up in Decatur, Illinois during years when precision meant difference between eating and not eating, between keeping a roof overhead and losing everything to forces beyond control. His father, William, ran small machine shop on corner where depression crushed businesses with mechanical efficiency. Shop made replacement parts for farm equipment. Tolerances measured in thousandths of inch because farmers could not afford parts that did not fit perfectly first time. Mistakes meant lost contracts. Lost contracts meant no money. No money meant family did not eat. Simple mathematics that young Tom absorbed watching his father work 12-hour days trying to keep shop alive through worst economic disaster in American history. His mother, Helen, taught mathematics at local high school, taught equations and geometry to students who mostly wanted to know when they would ever use this in real life. She had answer they did not expect. You use mathematics every day, whether you recognize it or not. Every decision you make is calculation. Every choice has variables and outcomes. People who understand mathematics survive. People who guess die, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But mathematics is difference between understanding world and being victim of world. Young Tom listened, absorbed lessons like dry ground absorbs rain, understood that his mother was teaching survival, not just arithmetic, that understanding systems gave you control when everything else was chaos, that calculating outcomes let you choose paths instead of being driven by circumstances you did not comprehend. He became boy who thought in numbers and systems and cause and effect, who saw world as series of problems waiting for solutions, who believed answers existed if you asked right questions and did proper analysis. 1940 brought tragedy that proved his mother's lessons in ways she never wanted. William died in a shop accident that precision should have prevented it. Lathe caught his sleeve during routine operation he had performed 1,000 times before, pulled him in before he could react. Safety protocols existed. William knew them, followed them religiously. But precision failed for 1 second. Fabric caught on rotating chuck. Physics took over with mechanical indifference. Metal and flesh and momentum combined an equation that ended with William dead on shop floor and Helen widowed at 43 with 2 children and teacher salary that barely covered rent. She did not break, did not collapse into grief and helplessness, though both would have been understandable. Calculated instead, sold shop equipment at fair prices, paid debts in full, moved family to smaller apartment, adjusted budget with same precision William had used making parts that had to fit perfectly or not at all. Taught Tom and younger sister that survival required thinking clearly when emotion wanted to overwhelm. That mathematics worked regardless of how you felt about results. That understanding systems gave you control even when everything else fell apart. Tom watched his mother navigate widowhood through calculation and precision, learned that emotion was real, but could not be allowed to override logic when survival depended on making correct decisions. That feeling sad did not change rent being due. That missing his father did not alter mathematics of making reduced income cover same expenses. He became boy who processed grief through understanding, who dealt with loss by learning lessons it taught, who honored his father by becoming even more precise and analytical than William had been. He was middle child by birth, quiet by nature, observant by training and temperament, the kind of boy who took apart clocks to understand how gears meshed, who read engineering journals his father had kept stacked in garage, who asked why about everything not from defiance but from genuine need to understand mechanisms underlying visible effects. At 16, he built small wind tunnel in garage using salvaged fan motor and balsa wood models shaped with patience and precision, tested wing shapes for hours at a time, adjusting angles with careful increments, recording lift coefficients on graph paper his mother provided from school supplies. She found him there late one evening, workshop illuminated by single bulb, fan running, Tom measuring forces with spring scales calibrated in grams. Asked what it was for. He said he did not know yet, just curious whether mathematics of flight matched physical reality, whether equations describing lift and drag actually worked when you built real wings in real air, moving at measurable velocities. She smiled with expression mixing pride and something like sorrow, said that was proper engineering approach. Understanding came from testing theories against reality, from measuring results, from adjusting models when predictions failed to match observations, from learning why instead of just accepting what. She did not know she was training future bomber escort pilot who would survive through calculation when courage alone would have killed her. Thought she was raising engineering, tractors, bridges, and peacekeepers. Someone who would use mathematics to create rather than to destroy. But principles were same regardless of application. Understand system completely. Calculate precisely. Test theories. Act on data, not assumptions. 1939 brought him to University of Illinois studying mechanical engineering. Joined in flying club not from romance with aviation, but from practical curiosity about whether theory matched practice. Aviation was applied physics made visible. Aircraft either flew or crashed based on whether design obeyed mathematical laws. There was no middle ground, no partial credit, no fooling physics with enthusiasm or hope or wishful thinking. He wanted to see whether math matched sensation, whether equations describing lift and thrust and drag actually felt true when you were in cockpit experiencing them firsthand. It mostly did. The mathematics worked when applied correctly. Aircraft behaved according to predictions if you flew them within calculated limits. This satisfied something deep in Reed's analytical mind. Proved that understanding preceded mastery, that you could know what aircraft would do before it did it if you understood systems completely. That control came from knowledge, not from instinct or luck or natural talent. Other students in Flying Club talked about freedom of flight, about escaping Earth's bonds, about romance of sky and clouds. Reed thought about engineering, about control surfaces and power curves and why aircraft stalled at certain angles of attack. Different motivation, same result. December 1941 changed everything for everyone, but especially for young men of military age. Pearl Harbor happened on Sunday morning while America slept. By Monday afternoon, enlistment offices had lines around blocks. Patriots and adventurers, and boys who wanted to be men, mixing together in queues leading to desks where sergeants asked questions and handed out forms. Tom enlisted Army Air Forces Tuesday morning. Did not wait for draft. Did not debate options with friends or family. Calculated instead using same method his mother had taught. Country needed pilots. He had aptitude demonstrated through Flying Club experience. He had analytical mind suited to managing complex systems under pressure. Mathematics said this was logical choice regardless of personal preference or fear or doubt. His mother asked if he was scared when he told her. He answered honestly because lying to her had never worked. Said fear was variable, not constant. Could be managed through understanding. She looked at him with eyes that had seen husband die despite precision and care. Said you sound like your father. He would be proud of you. Then added softer, I am terrified for you, but proud too. Primary training happened in Texas, hot, dusty air bases where young men learned to fly military aircraft or washed out trying. He soloed in 7 hours. Instructors noted his precision immediately in reports they filed. Also questioned his aggression or seeming lack thereof. He flew with mechanical smoothness. Never pushed aircraft past calculated limits. Never took risks that were not necessary for accomplishing assigned training objectives. In combat training, he scored well on gunnery ranges, could hit towed targets reliably at various ranges and deflection angles, but rarely engaged in mock dogfights with enthusiasm others showed, preferred to observe instead, to note what tactics worked and what did not, to understand why certain maneuvers succeeded while others failed, to see patterns in how aircraft and pilots interacted, to calculate what happened rather than just experience what happened. One instructor wrote in his file, technically proficient, but lacks killer instinct required for fighter pilots. Another wrote, thinks too much, may hesitate under fire when instant reaction required. Both were wrong, but also partially correct in ways they did not understand. Reed did think constantly, did analyze obsessively, did approach everything as problem requiring solution, but would not hesitate when time came because would have already calculated exactly what to do. Hesitation came from uncertainty. Reed eliminated uncertainty through understanding. Different path to same destination. Instructors did not recognize this, could not see that analytical approach and aggressive action were not opposites. That thinking clearly under pressure enabled decisive action better than pure instinct ever could. Graduated him middle of class. Sent him to fighters because he requested fighters and military had learned analytical minds. Sometimes made excellent fighter pilots despite not fitting stereotypical profile. P-51 transition training happened in California on air base near coast. Beautiful aircraft by any measure. Best fighter in American inventory for escort role. Laminar flow wing design gave it speed. Packard Merlin engine gave it power. Internal fuel capacity plus drop tanks gave it range no other fighter could match. Could escort bombers all way to Berlin and back. Could stay with them through entire mission instead of turning back halfway, leaving bombers vulnerable. This appealed to Reed on level others did not understand or appreciate. Long missions required fuel management, required constant calculation of consumption versus distance remaining, required understanding exactly how much throttle to use at what altitude to maximize range while maintaining formation position, required thinking ahead constantly about where you were and where you needed to be and whether numbers allowed getting there. Perfect aircraft for pilot who thought in mathematics, who saw fuel not as abstract concept, but as finite resource requiring precise management, who understood that running out of gas over Germany meant death as surely as getting shot down. Summer 1944 brought him to England, to 357th Fighter Group based at Leiston on Suffolk coast. Muddy airfield carved from farmland, cold barracks built hastily from wood and tar paper. Men who had been fighting for months with expressions showing what they had seen and done and lost. His first missions were uneventful by deliberate choice. He flew escort, stayed in formation, protected bombers from German fighters when they appeared, returned with full ammunition load more often than not because he did not shoot unless perfect shot presented itself. Other pilots racked up kills quickly, got their names on squadron board, got recognized at briefings, got promoted to flight leaders and element leaders, got respect that came from proven success in combat. Reed racked up flight hours and observations instead. Different currency, different value system, different measure of success invisible to those who counted only enemy aircraft destroyed. He was not afraid of combat. Fear would have been a rational response because fear did not change outcomes, did not improve performance, did not increase survival probability, was calculating instead. Every engagement he witnessed, he logged in notebook he carried everywhere. Altitude at merge, airspeeds, sun position relative to combatants, attack angles, German pilots preferred. Energy states at beginning, middle, and end of engagement, break-off patterns when low on fuel or ammunition, how they dove east toward home bases, how they concentrated attacks on damaged aircraft because efficient tactics meant low risk, high reward from German perspective. Exploitable patterns from Reed's perspective, if you watched carefully enough and thought systematically about what observations meant. He saw things invisible to pilots thinking only about individual dogfights, saw that Luftwaffe pilots were skilled but not superhuman, were experienced but also predictable, followed training that taught specific responses to specific situations, used standard tactics that worked against standard opponents, reacted to threats in ways that could be anticipated if you studied them long enough, understood that best fight was one your opponent did not know he was in until it was already over. That surprise mattered more than speed. That position mattered more than courage. That understanding enemy psychology was force multiplier greater than any amount of ammunition or armor. His wingman asked him once why he did not shoot more, why he came back mission after mission with ammunition unexpended. Reed said he was waiting for certainty, for a situation where mathematics guaranteed success rather than just making it possible, for engagement where all variables aligned to produce outcome he could predict before pulling trigger. Wingman did not understand. Thought Reed was afraid or overthinking or somehow deficient. Reed did not explain further, did not see point in defending approach that would prove itself eventually through results. Just kept drawing in notebook. Diagrams showing attack angles and energy states, calculations of closure rates and deflection requirements. Speed brackets are showing where Mustang had advantage over Messerschmitt and where Messerschmitt had advantage over Mustang. The arithmetic of aerial predation written in engineer's precise hand with mechanical pencil on graph paper. Others saw random marks, Reed saw patterns waiting to be exploited, saw vulnerabilities waiting to be targeted, saw ways to win that did not require being better pilot or having better aircraft, just required understanding completely and executing precisely when moment came. Met Catherine Mitchell at University of Illinois Library, spring 1941, before war changed everything. She was chemistry student, found him at table covered with calculations and aerodynamics textbooks, asked what he was working on with genuine curiosity, not just politeness. He explained trying to understand why birds did not stall in tight turns despite physics equations saying they should, why wing loading and velocity and angle of attack somehow combined to keep them flying when mathematics predicted stall. She sat down without being invited. They talked for 3 hours about lift coefficients and molecular bonds, about how understanding small things helped understand large things, about how mathematics describe reality, but sometimes reality was more complicated than equations captured. Started dating after that conversation. Found they thought similarly despite different fields. Both analytical. Both curious about mechanisms underlying visible effects. Both believing answers existed if you asked right questions and did proper research. Got engaged before his deployment. Simple ceremony with no drama. His mother present. Catherine's parents. Few friends from university. Quiet acknowledgement they wanted to build life together, assuming world cooperated and war ended, and he survived long enough to come home. She wrote letters weekly from Illinois where she continued chemistry studies. Early letters cheerful and optimistic. Later letters showed worry creeping through words despite attempts to hide it. Squadron thinks you are a coward, Tom. 37 missions logged. 0 kills recorded. When will you fight? When will you prove you belong there? When will you do what fighter pilots are supposed to do? He wrote back carefully. Explained without really explaining. Said, I am not coward. I am calculating. Difference matters even if others do not see it yet. Trust me, please. I know what I am doing even if it does not look like it from outside. She said she trusted, but worry showed through anyway because loving someone in combat was mathematics that always produced fear as output regardless of input variables. By October 1944, Reed had 37 combat missions logged in personal flight book he kept separate from official records. 0 confirmed kills next to his name on squadron tally board. Not because he could not shoot accurately. Range scores proved he could hit targets with precision others envied. Not because he avoided combat deliberately. He flew every assigned mission, stayed in assigned position, did his job protecting bombers from fighter attack. Just did not shoot because situations never met his criteria for acceptable engagement. For mathematical guarantee of success that made expenditure of ammunition worthwhile in larger scheme. Different standard than what other pilots used. Different calculation of what constituted acceptable risk and worthwhile target. Different philosophy about when to shoot and when to wait. His squadron mates called him Lucky Reed because he had never been hit. Not once across 37 missions into Germany where flak-filled sky and fighters attacked with professional skill. In war where aluminum skin and human flesh met high-velocity steel daily at 20,000 feet, that kind of luck drew suspicion rather than admiration. Some thought he hung back deliberately, stayed out of fights, let others do dangerous work while he cruised safely in formation, pretending to protect bombers. Others thought he was just cautious, playing statistical game, trying to survive 25 mission tour so could go home to whatever life waited in America. Few thought he was working something out. Some equation rest of them had not seen yet. Some approach that would make sense eventually if they were patient enough to watch and smart enough to understand. Squadron dynamics were brutal in their honesty. Pilots who got kills got respect automatically, got promoted to positions of authority, got credibility when they talked tactics at briefings. Pilots who did not get kills got questions and doubt and suspicion. Got moved to less critical positions because commanders needed proven fighters leading elements into combat. Reed sat in back of briefing rooms, listened carefully but did not speak much. His flight reports were single paragraphs of technical description. No enemy contact, no ammunition expended. His logbook showed perfect attendance but no results by standards that mattered to fighter squadrons, measuring effectiveness in enemy aircraft destroyed. In barracks at night after missions, someone would mutter about Lucky Reed, about how he was too lucky for his own good. about how luck eventually ran out for everyone, how mathematics of survival caught up with you regardless of how careful you were. He did not respond to comments, did not defend himself against implications, did not argue or explain, just kept drawing in notebook that went everywhere with him. Diagrams of energy states and attack angles, speed brackets, enclosure rates, overshoot geometry calculated from physics. The arithmetic of aerial predation written with mechanical pencil and engineer's careful precise hand that his father recognized. His best friend was Captain David Chen, 24 years old, Chinese-American from Chicago's Chinatown. Everything Reed was not in personality and approach. Aggressive where Reed was analytical. Confident where Reed was careful. Natural fighter pilot who thought in terms of instinct and reaction time and feel for aircraft. Already had 6 confirmed kills painted on his Mustang's nose. Flew with joy that others found infectious and inspiring. Made combat look like sport instead of industrial killing conducted at scale. They met in flight training, opposites who somehow clicked despite, or perhaps because of differences. Chen asked Reed to be his wingman early in their squadron assignment. Said he trusted Reed's precision even if he did not understand Reed's patience. Said having analytical wingmen watching his back let him focus on fighting aggressively, knowing someone was calculating threats he might miss in heat of engagement. They flew together through summer and early fall, Chen protecting bombers through aggressive interception, Reed protecting Chen through observation and calculation, and calling out threats Chen's tunnel vision sometimes made him miss. Chen would tease him good-naturedly about 0 kills. Would say, "Come on, professor, show me what that engineering degree is good for besides drawing diagrams." Would laugh and slap his shoulder after missions. Would say one day you are going to surprise everyone, including yourself. Reed would smile and not answer because explaining would take time they did not have and Chen would not understand anyway, even if given unlimited time. Chen thought in terms of feel, of instinct, of reading opponents and reacting faster than they could react. Reed thought in terms of systems, of energy management, of decision trees with calculable outcomes. Both approaches valid. Both kept you alive if executed well. Both could get you killed if you guessed wrong at critical moment. October 14th, 1944 brought mission to Cologne that changed everything for Reed, though he did not know it during morning briefing. Heavy fighter opposition expected according to intelligence reports. Luftwaffe defending industrial targets with everything they had left. Experienced pilots. Veterans who knew their aircraft intimately. Men who had survived this long because they were good at killing Americans. Formation crossed into German airspace at dawn under clear skies. Visibility perfect. Worst possible conditions for bombers wanting cloud cover to hide in. Best possible conditions for German fighters wanting to see targets clearly from long distance. They hit the formation in coordinated waves. Messerschmitts diving out of sun in attacks designed to break up escort and scatter bombers. Standard Luftwaffe tactics executed with professional efficiency born from years of practice. Reed's element was on bomber formation's left flank. He watched Germans execute attack, noted angles they used, noted speeds they maintained, noted how they communicated through position changes rather than radio. Professional work by skilled opponents who deserve respect even while trying to kill you. Chen's element was on right flank, protecting bombers from that direction. Reed could hear him on squadron frequency, could hear excitement in voice that meant Chen saw opportunity developing. Then Chen called that he had damaged 109 below main formation, trailing smoke, losing altitude rapidly. Obvious kill waiting to be claimed, easy victory to add to his growing tally. Broke formation to pursue despite doctrine saying stay with bombers. Despite training emphasizing that isolated fighters were vulnerable fighters. Despite everything they had been taught about maintaining mutual support. Reed called warning immediately, told Chen to stay in formation. Told him damaged aircraft looked like bait because it was flying too steadily for genuinely crippled machine. Chen acknowledged but did not turn back. Was already diving after smoking Messerschmitt, going for kill number 7. Going for victory that would earn him congratulations at debriefing and another painted silhouette on his aircraft and reputation as aggressive, successful fighter pilot. Reed saw what Chen did not see because Reed was watching patterns, not individual aircraft. Saw 2 more 109s positioned above Chen's diving path, placed perfectly for ambush. Waiting with patience that spoke of planning, not opportunism. This was deliberate trap. Damaged aircraft was bait. Chen was prey walking into carefully prepared kill zone. Reed called urgent warning, told Chen to break off immediately, to climb back to formation before trap closed. Chen acknowledged again but did not turn. Was committed now, closing on smoking target, getting gun camera footage, getting the kill. The two Germans above dropped on Chen like hawks on rabbit, bracketing attack from above and behind executed with textbook precision. Perfect geometry, perfect timing, perfect execution of tactic designed specifically to kill aggressive American pilots who could not resist pursuing damaged prey. Chen realized what was happening, but too late. Far too late. Tried to break left using Mustang's superior roll rate. Could not escape because already inside their firing solution. Already had lost initiative. Already was target, not hunter. His Mustang took hits that sounded like hammers on metal over radio before transmission cut off. Engine exploded an orange fireball visible from Reed's position miles away. Canopy shattered under cannon fire. Aircraft rolled inverted and fell from sky trailing fire and smoke and pieces, and one pilot who had followed instinct and doctrine and training straight into carefully prepared ambush. Reed watched helpless from too far away. Could not help. Could not intervene. Could only watch his best friend fall 20,000 feet toward German countryside below. Chen did not get out. Parachute never deployed. Maybe he was unconscious from hits. Maybe canopy was jammed by damage. Maybe he tried, but aircraft was spinning too fast. Did not matter now. Result was same regardless of reason. Mustang impacted Earth somewhere in Germany, with Chen still inside cockpit. Radio went silent except for other voices calling and asking and confirming what everyone had seen, but nobody wanted to believe. Squadron continued mission because mission was larger than any single pilot. Reed flew rest of sortie on autopilot, did his job mechanically, protected bombers, returned to base, filed report using words that meant nothing, went through debriefing answering questions in voice that sounded like someone else talking, then went to barracks and sat on Chen's empty bunk, staring at nothing for a long time. Other pilots gave him space, understood grief because had felt it themselves too many times already. Eventually he reached under bunk where Chen kept personal items, pulled out flight logs, read through them carefully. 6 confirmed kills documented with precise times and locations and brief tactical notes. All aggressive pursuits, all following doctrine that rewarded aggressive interception and initiative, all using instinct and reaction time and courage that everyone praised. Chen had died doing exactly what training taught him to do, had died following procedures that usually worked and were taught by instructors who survived using same methods, had died being predictable in a way that skilled enemy could study and exploit. Germans had not gotten lucky, had planned traps specifically designed to kill pilots like Chen, aggressive Americans who could not resist pursuing damaged aircraft, who valued kills more than caution, who thought individually rather than systematically. Reed understood something sitting there surrounded by Chen's remaining possessions, waiting to be boxed and shipped home to grieving family in Chicago. The tactic that killed Chen could be reversed and used against Germans. If Luftwaffe used wounded aircraft as bait to draw aggressive American pilots into prepared ambushes, then Americans could use identical tactic against Germans. If predatory instinct was predictable enough to exploit, then appearing vulnerable while actually being fully capable created perfect reversal, made hunters into prey, made their strength into weakness, made their training into liability. Mathematics was same regardless of which side used it. Physics worked for anyone who understood it completely. Germans had proven tactic worked against Americans. Reed could prove identical tactic worked against Germans if executed properly with right preparation and right understanding of enemy psychology. Every variable was calculable. Every risk was manageable. Every outcome was predictable if you did analysis correctly. The idea formed complete in his mind sitting on dead friend's bunk. Not from anger or revenge or grief, though all three existed, from pure logic, from seeing pattern others missed, from understanding that warfare at its core was mathematics and psychology, that whoever understood both better would win regardless of courage or equipment or numbers. Chen had died because he was predictable. Reed would survive and win by being unpredictable, by doing what enemy did not expect, by using their assumptions against them. He began testing theory immediately but carefully, not in combat where mistakes killed you and everyone depending on you. In training flights over England, where mistakes meant embarrassment, not death, would shut down engine deliberately during routine patrol. Calculate exactly how aircraft handled with power asymmetric, how much altitude lost per minute, how much speed bled away, how quickly could recover when added power back. Learn precisely how Mustang behaved when pushed to edges. Manual never discussed, because manual writers assumed you would never deliberately create emergency conditions. Crew Chief Sergeant Morrison noticed unusual requests. Questions about engine performance at partial power settings. Questions about how much smoke oil system produced under specific conditions. Questions suggesting Reed was planning something beyond normal operations. Asked directly what Reed had in mind. Reed explained theory without holding back. Morrison listened carefully, checked Reed's calculations against engineering specifications he kept in maintenance logs. Confirmed aircraft could sustain loads Reed predicted. Confirmed manual margins were deliberately conservative, with safety factors built in that could be reduced if you understood exactly what you were doing and why. Morrison said, "You are right, Captain. Machine can do what mathematics says. Question is whether you can fly precisely enough at margins where most pilots would lose control." Reed said, "I can if I understand completely. If I know exactly where every edge is located." Morrison said, "Then I will maintain this aircraft to tolerances supporting your calculations. We'll make absolutely certain machine can do what physics says possible." Partnership formed between engineer-pilot and engineer-mechanic, both understanding that precision made impossible missions become possible missions. That understanding completely changed what could be done. Reed's notebook filled with detailed analysis over following weeks. Every variable documented with precision that would have impressed his engineering professors at university. Altitude effects on engine performance at various power settings and temperatures. Speed differential calculations showing exactly how fast Mustang accelerated from different initial conditions and configurations. Turn radius versus velocity curves derived from physics and confirmed through testing. Overshoot geometry calculated using closure rates and human reaction times and aircraft performance limits. Built smoke generator himself from spare parts, scrounged from maintenance shops. Modified oil feed line to create convincing appearance of engine losing coolant. Tested it flying alone at night over North Sea so nobody would ask questions about why he was experimenting with looking damaged. Got it working reliably after multiple attempts and adjustments. Could trigger white smoke that looked exactly like cooling system failure. Could shut it off instantly. Could fake damage so convincingly that even experienced pilots would believe aircraft was genuinely crippled. Engineering solution to tactical problem. Calculation making deception possible. November brought first deliberate combat test on mission over Frankfurt. German fighters bounce formation using standard tactics. Reed pulled away deliberately. Not far, just enough to appear separated and vulnerable. Throttled back to lose speed, let Mustang drift low and slow as if he had taken hits and was trying to maintain control long enough to reach friendly territory. New wingman Parker radioed in, voice carrying real panic. "Lead is hit. Lead is trailing smoke." Voice sounded genuinely frightened because Parker half believed it, despite Reed explaining plan during pre-flight briefing. Two 109s saw separated Mustang trailing smoke, peeled off from main German formation. Dove in for what appeared to be easy kill, exactly as Reed predicted, exactly as planned based on months of observation. They closed from 400 yards, 300. Reed did not move yet. Timing was absolutely critical to success. Move too early and they would recognize trap and disengage. Move too late and they would kill him before he could respond. 200 yards. They opened fire. Tracer's arc-10 passed his wing close enough to see clearly, but far enough to miss if you knew how to judge distance precisely through experience and calculation. Then he moved with explosive violence that surprised even himself despite all the planning. Full throttle. Merlin engine screaming from near idle to war emergency power. Hard left brake pulling 6 Gs that crushed him into seat hard enough to gray vision at edges. Mustang snapping around. Energy flooding back into airframe in ways that looked impossible, but were actually just physics applied correctly with proper understanding. The 109s overshot badly, closure rate far too high for them to compensate, could not slow down fast enough, could not turn tight enough, could not do anything except fly past him into empty sky. Reed rolled inverted smoothly, pulled through vertical with control that looked rehearsed, slotted neatly behind trailing German, who was still trying to understand what just happened. One burst at point-blank range, 2 seconds of trigger, time, 50 caliber rounds tearing through thin aluminum skin and vital systems. 109's canopy shattered into fragments. Engine began streaming coolant. Aircraft rolled left, trailing smoke. Fell away. Second German tried to climb using energy possessed after overshooting at high speed. Reed did not follow because following wasted fuel and ammunition. Nose down instead, accelerated smoothly back to formation speed, extended away. German climbed alone and confused. When he leveled out, Reed was gone, vanished as if never there. No prolonged dogfight burning fuel. No ammunition wasted on maneuvering target. No time wasted proving dominance. Just physics and psychology and execution. Just bait and trap and kill. Just engineering applied to combat when it mattered. Parker was completely silent on flight home. At debriefing, Reed filed claim calmly. 1 enemy aircraft destroyed. Gun camera confirmed. Squadron Commander Harrison asked what happened out there. Reed explained in the voice, suggesting he was discussing engineering experiment, not combat. Said he exploited energy advantage, using enemy's predictable response to perceived vulnerability. Harrison nodded slowly. Understood maybe 10% of explanation. Did not ask more, just said write it up for my review. Reed wrote in his notebook that night. Test 1 successful. Chen's death avenged not through anger or revenge, but through understanding. Through mathematics applied when mathematics mattered most. Through proving that thinking defeated instinct when thinking was done correctly. He had killed 1 German, had proven concept worked, had demonstrated that predators could become prey if you understood their psychology completely and executed perfectly under pressure. Now question was whether he could scale it, whether he could teach it, whether he could change how entire Air Force fought, whether mathematics could defeat courage and tradition and doctrine written in blood of men who came before. December would provide answer to those questions in ways nobody expected, including Reed himself. 3 days after Frankfurt test, Reed ran the experiment again. Different mission, different conditions, different result that taught him as much as success had. Mission over Brunswick. German fighters appeared predictably. Reed pulled away from formation, trailing smoke he generated through jury-rigged system. Morrison helped refine. Dropped low, looked vulnerable, waited for Germans to take bait. They did not come. Circled high instead. Watched. Cautious rather than aggressive. Eventually broke off and dove east toward home. Reed aborted the deception. Rejoined formation without incident. No harm done. But lesson learned that would prove critical. The tactic worked on aggression, not caution. Worked on predatory instinct, not professional skepticism. Required enemy who valued quick kill over careful verification. Required pilots thinking with emotion rather than analysis. Understanding this limitation was as important as understanding the technique itself. He refined his model based on what both tests revealed. Could not fake damage too early in engagement. Germans had to see you in combat first. Had to believe you were genuine fighter, not decoy. Could not fake damage too obviously. Had to look real. Engine smoke, yes. Erratic control inputs, yes. But aircraft still had to appear to be trying to escape. Had to maintain enough speed and coordination that Germans believed catching you required effort. Just enough vulnerability to trigger attack instinct. Not so much that it triggered suspicion. And you needed wingman who understood that radio silence during setup meant trust, not abandonment. Parker was learning this. Was getting better at playing his role. At calling out the fake damage convincingly enough that Germans monitoring frequencies would believe it real. At staying high and covering while Reed executed below. At resisting instinct to dive down and help when it looked like Reed was dying. Trust built through repetition, through seeing tactic work, through understanding mathematics behind what looked like madness. 3rd week of November, Reed requested meeting with Squadron Commander. Major Paul Harrison was 38 years old. Experienced pilot with 2 tours and 8 confirmed kills. Believed in doctrine because doctrine kept most pilots alive most of the time. Had seen innovation get good men killed when clever ideas met hard reality of aerial combat. Was skeptical by nature and training. Required proof, not promises. Required results, not theories. Reed walked into his office carrying notebook and 3 pages of typed analysis. Harrison gestured to chair. Reed sat, explained what he wanted without preamble or apology. Wanted to try something on next deep penetration mission. Something unorthodox. Something that would violate standard procedures deliberately, but that mathematics said would work if executed properly. Harrison's expression suggested he was already preparing to say no. Reed opened notebook before Harrison could speak. Walked him through the logic methodically. Not appeals to emotion or revenge for Chen, though both existed beneath surface. Pure systematic analysis presented like engineering report. Started with observation. Luftwaffe pilots attacked damaged aircraft because it was efficient tactic from their perspective. Low risk, high reward. Minimized exposure to defensive fire while maximizing probability of kill. This created predictable response pattern. Predictability could be exploited. Showed energy state diagrams. Explained overshoot mechanics using physics Harrison had forgotten from training. Described psychological advantage of exploiting enemy's assumptions. Showed gun camera footage from Frankfurt test. Presented fuel consumption data, proving technique did not waste resources. Referenced additional tests conducted over England using friendly aircraft as simulated aggressors. Laid out every variable, every calculation, every risk and mitigation. Harrison listened without interrupting, studied diagrams Reed had drawn with engineer's precision, asked hard questions when presentation finished. What if trick fails? What if German does not take bait? What if you are too slow recovering from simulated damage? What if other Germans see through deception and bracket you? Reed answered each question with mathematics, showed calculations, explained contingencies, demonstrated he had thought through failure modes as carefully as success scenarios. If fails, you abort and rejoin formation. No loss except wasted time. If German does not bite, he is either cautious or low on fuel. Either way, threat reduced without expenditure of ammunition. If too slow to recover, then miscalculated margins. But tests proved margins existed when technique executed within parameters. If other Germans recognized trap, they disengage. Germans were aggressive but not suicidal. Would not press attack, they recognized as ambush. Harrison was quiet for a long moment after Reed finished. Looked at notebook filled with calculations. Looked at typed report with diagrams and performance data. Looked at young captain who thought combat was applied mathematics. Finally spoke. Said you get one chance on next appropriate mission. If it does not work, you follow standard procedures afterward. No more experiments, no more testing theories in combat. Understood. Reed said understood, sir. Did not mention he had already tested it successfully twice. Just said he would execute precisely within calculated parameters. Harrison took the proposal to Group Commander Colonel Richard Anderson. Anderson was 42 years old, doctrine man through and through, believed procedures were written in blood of men who died proving what not to do. Had seen too many clever ideas kill good pilots who thought they were smarter than accumulated wisdom. Read Reed's proposal twice. Studied gun camera footage from Frankfurt. Called an operations officer for second opinion. Operations officer said it was too risky. If trick failed, pilot would be slow, low, and alone. Perfect target, certain death. Anderson asked how many times Reed had used the technique. Harrison said twice in combat, 1 kill confirmed, 1 abort when enemy did not engage. No damage to Reed's aircraft either time. Operations officer went quiet. Numbers were harder to argue against than theories. Anderson made decision that would change more than he knew. Said train 2 other pilots, volunteers only, run controlled test on next deep penetration mission. If works, we expand. If does not, we stop immediately. This was how innovation entered military doctrine. Not through grand pronouncements or official channels. Through small tests. Through mathematics that could not be denied. Through proving concepts worked before asking permission to use them widely. Harrison selected 2 captains for training, both experienced, both skeptical. both willing to try something new because losses were high and new approaches might reduce casualties. Reed briefed them in small room away from other pilots. Walk through techniques step by step using blackboard and chalk. Not just mechanics, but psychology. Not just what to do, but why it worked and when it would fail. You must sell the deception completely. If you are faking, they will see it. Germans are experienced pilots, have survived long time by being good at their jobs, must commit to role. Damaged aircraft do not fly smoothly. They skid. They wallow. They look panicked. Pilot inputs are jerky. Altitude bleeds away faster than it should. Engine smoke comes in pulses, not steady stream. Details matter because details create belief. One captain asked what happens if they do not bite. Reed said then you did not sell it convincingly, or they are out of fuel. Either way, you abort and rejoin. No loss except pride. Other captain asked, what if they are smarter than you think? What if they recognize trap? Reed said then you are in fair fight and use standard tactics, but most of the time they are not thinking analytically. They are reacting instinctively. Predators see wounded prey and attack without questioning. That is what predators do. Reaction is predictable. Predictable can be exploited. Questions stopped. Captains looked at diagrams, looked at calculations, looked at each other, decided to trust the mathematics even if they did not fully understand it. They practiced over North Sea using remote training area. Mock engagements with some Mustangs playing bait and others playing German aggressors. Took 4 runs before first captain got timing right. Too early and aggressors did not commit. Too late and aggressors were already firing. Sweet spot existed in narrow window between appearing vulnerable and actually being vulnerable. Second captain was smoother from start. Natural actor. By 6th practice run, both were executing cleanly enough that Reed approved them for combat test. December brought weather that grounded operations for days at time. Low clouds, ice, fog that turned airfields into white nothing. Missions scrubbed. Pilots waited in ready rooms drinking coffee and playing cards and trying not to think about odds. Then December 19th broke clear and cold. Perfect flying weather. Terrible fighting weather because no clouds to hide in. Target was Kassel, rail yard deep in Germany choked with supply trains feeding Eastern Front. Strategic priority. Heavy defenses expected. Morning briefing at 0400 hours. Officers pulled back curtains revealing maps with red lines stretching into Germany. Intelligence officer described target and expected opposition. Flak concentrations around rail yards. Fighter bases nearby with experienced pilots. Losses estimated at 10 to 15%. 1 in 7 aircraft might not return. Pilots did their own mathematics. Looked around the room, counted faces. Some would not be there tomorrow. Reed briefed Parker before walking to aircraft. Told him exactly what to expect. If I call trail, you drop back and go high. Do not follow me down. Just watch and cover. Call out the damage convincingly. Make it sound real. Germans may be monitoring our frequencies. Parker asked what Reed was planning with expressions suggesting he already knew answer. Reed said an experiment that should work if executed properly. Trust the calculations. Parker nodded slowly, said he trusted Reed's math even when it looked like suicide. Walked to aircraft in pre-dawn darkness. Breath frosting in air cold enough to freeze exposed skin. Mustangs sitting in revetments covered with frost that ground crews were wiping away with rags. Morrison met Reed at his aircraft. Said she is ready, Captain. Smoke generator tested and working. Engines tuned to perfection. Fuel tanks topped. She will do everything you ask if you fly her right. Reed said I will fly her right. Morrison said I know you will. Bring her home. Bring yourself home. Reed climbed into cockpit that smelled of oil and metal and cold leather. Engine start procedures executed mechanically. Switches in sequence. Prime. Magnetos. Starter engaged. Merlin coughing blue smoke before catching with roar that shook airframe. 3 more engines starting across field. Thunderous sound of radials coming alive. 48 Mustangs were preparing to fly into Germany where people were trying to kill them. Pre-flight checks completed. Radio calls exchanged. Formation taxi to runway. Takeoff roll. Wheels leaving English soil. Climb out over channel. Formation assembly over coast. Turn east into pale winter sun rising over Europe. Flight across France uneventful. Countryside white with snow below. Contrails marking sky above. Radio chatter minimal. Eyes scanning for fighters that could appear from any direction. Border into Germany crossed without incident. Deeper penetration. Closer to target. Closer to where German fighters would be waiting. Bomber stream appeared ahead. 200 B-17s in combat boxes. Fortresses they were called, though aluminum skin and brave crews could not make them truly safe from flak and fighters. Fighters hit them over target. Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs diving from altitude in coordinated attack. 30 or more aircraft splitting into elements. Radio exploded with calls. Bandits high, bandits 6 o'clock. Break right, break left. Formation fractured into individual fights. Geometry problems solved in seconds. Reed's helicopters on bomber formations saw 4 109s rolling in towards straggling B-17. Did not go for leaders. Went for second pair instead. Then did something no one expected. Pulled power back to cruise. Mustang slowed noticeably. Dropped nose slightly into shallow descent. Skidded left with uncoordinated control inputs that looked exactly like pilot fighting damaged aircraft. Toggled smoke generator Morrison had helped refine from crude prototype to reliable system. White vapor began streaming from engine cowling, looked perfectly like coolant leak from damaged cooling system. Parker called it in with voice carrying genuine panic. Lead is hit. Lead is trailing smoke. Germans monitoring frequency would hear fear, would believe American pilot was dying. 2 109s saw smoking Mustang dropping away from formation, broke off their attack run on bomber, turned toward easier target. This was exactly what Reed had calculated they would do. Easier kill, lower risk. Standard Luftwaffe doctrine being followed predictably. They dove in using bracket tactics. One high, one low. Textbook attack designed to give target no escape route. Reed counted seconds. Timing had to be perfect. 3 seconds. Smoke still streaming. Mustang still wallowing. Germans closing fast. 2 seconds. 400 yards. 300. 1 second. 200 yards. They opened fire. Tracers arcing through air. Reed cut smoke generator. Slammed throttle forward to firewall stop. Merlin screaming as boost pressure spiked. Pulled hard into diving 109. 6 Gs crushing him into seat. Vision tunneling. Mustang snapping around with energy that seemed impossible. Speed jumped from 250 to 290 knots in 2 seconds. Turn radius tightened dramatically. German pilot realized too late what was happening. Tried to pull out of dive. Could not. Physics would not allow it. Closure rate too high. Turn radius too large. Already committed to geometry that put him in front of Reed's guns. 1 short burst. 30 rounds. Half second of trigger time. Point blank range. 109's wing root shredded under impacts. Structural failure cascading. Wings separated from fuselage. Aircraft snapped inverted. Spun into clouds below trailing pieces. Second German overshot badly. Speed too high from diving attack. Tried to zoom climb to regain energy advantage. Reed rolled smoothly. Pulled vertical to meet him at apex. Another burst. 2 seconds. Canopy disintegrated. Cockpit destroyed. Systems failed. 109 tumbled backward. No longer aircraft. Just collection of parts falling independently. Elapsed time from first German's decision to attack until second German's aircraft broke apart was 40 seconds. Maybe less. Parker was shouting over radio something about impossible, and how did you, but Reed was already scanning for next threat. Spotted 3 more 109s circling east, regrouping after initial bounce. Had not seen what just happened. Were reforming for another pass at bombers. Reed climbed into sun. Throttle still at maximum continuous power. Altitude building through thin cold air. Parker followed without being told. Was learning the rhythm, understanding the dance. Reed ran variation on the trick. Did not just fake damage this time. Faked panic itself. Broke away from Parker with violent uncoordinated maneuver. Dove erratically as if he had completely lost situational awareness. As if he was terrified pilot who did not know where he was or what to do next. Wings rocking, nose wandering, every movement screaming confusion and fear and vulnerability. Germans saw exactly this, saw separated American, saw confusion, saw easy kill worth taking even though mission called for attacking bombers. Three peeled off, dove after him. Reed let them close, measured their commitment with eyes that saw numbers and angles and intercept geometry. At 400 yards pulled into climbing spirals so tight it looked suicidal. Engine screaming, airframe groaning under stress. Lead German followed because training said follow wounded prey. Other two tried cutting him off using tactics that worked against pilots who thought conventionally. Reed rolled out at apex, inverted with world upside down. Dove straight back through them head on. Combined closing speed exceeded 1,000 miles per hour. Insane by normal standards. Perfect geometry by mathematics. Fired at lead German. 109 exploded into fireball that marked sky. Reed kept diving through expanding debris, threading needle between other two who scattered on pure instinct. Training abandoned. Survival taking over. One broke left, other broke right. Both reactions predictable because both came from same doctrine. Reed chopped throttle, extended flaps despite dangerous airspeed, whipped Mustang around in turn that great his vision, pulled lead on left-hand German, fired, hit engine, punctured cooling system. 109 rolled over trailing fuel and glycol mix that would ignite soon. Last German ran, did not look back, did not try to help wingman, just dove east toward home as fast as aircraft would fly. Reed did not chase. Retracted flaps, checked fuel, 4 kills, ammunition expenditure acceptable. Fuel state allowed return to base with comfortable margin. Mission successful by any measure. Climb back to formation altitude. Parker rejoined with expressions suggesting he had witnessed something he would remember. Rest of his life, however long that turned out to be. Bomber stream continued toward target. Dropped bombs through heavy flak. Turned for home. Escort fighters stayed with them. Reed flew rest of mission mechanically. Mind already processing what happened. Refining understanding. Noting what worked perfectly and what could be improved. Mental notebook filling with observations that would become report that would change doctrine if anyone believed it. At debriefing that night, gun camera footage rolled in complete silence. Intelligence officer counted kills frame by frame. 4 confirmed, each execution textbook perfect in ways that violated every textbook. Squadron Commander Harrison watched without expression. When footage ended, he looked at Reed, looked at the 2 captains Reed had trained, said write it up, full report. Procedures, setup, execution, psychology, everything. I want it typed tomorrow morning. Reed spent that night writing 3-page report that would eventually circulate through entire 8th Air Force. Titled it Exploitation of Predatory Instinct in Enemy Fighter Tactics. Laid out concept methodically. Luftwaffe experienced pilots were aggressive but not reckless. Attacked damaged or isolated aircraft because it was efficient. Low risk from their perspective. High reward. Good tactics that worked against conventional opponents. But aggression created predictable response pattern. Predictability could be exploited through deception if deception was convincing enough. Key variables were altitude, speed, differential, and timing. Had to bait enemy at right energy state. Too high and they would not commit. Too low and you could not recover. Margin was narrow but repeatable if executed within calculated parameters. Included performance data. Mustang acceleration curves showing exactly how fast aircraft could transition from appearing damaged to being fully combat capable. Turn radius versus speed showing where Mustang had advantage. Overshoot geometry calculated from closure rates and human reaction times. Reference test flights conducted using friendly aircraft. Did not mention building smoke generator from spare parts. Did not mention testing alone at night over North Sea. Some details better left unstated when trying to convince skeptical commanders. Just presented mathematics. Presented results. Presented evidence that technique worked when executed properly by pilots who understood it completely. Harrison read report twice. Took it to Colonel Anderson. Anderson read it carefully. Called an operations officer again. They spread diagrams on table. Went through step by step. Operations officer still said it was risky. Anderson asked how many times Reed had used it now. Harrison said 6 times in combat, 4 kills on most recent mission. No damage to Reed's aircraft anytime. Operations officer went quiet because numbers did not lie even when they contradicted conventional wisdom. Anderson made decision that would prove more important than anyone knew. Said we teach this to entire group. Everyone gets briefed. Volunteers practice until proficient. We use it on next major mission. See if results are reproducible across multiple pilots, not just Reed. If works, we document and submit to 8th Air Force Headquarters. If does not work, we stop. But we try because losses are too high and anything that might reduce them deserves testing. December 23rd brought mission that would prove whether technique could scale beyond one unusually analytical pilot. Target was airfield near Munich. Luftwaffe defending remaining bases with everything left. Expected resistance heavy. Intelligence warned not to expect Germans to run. Would fight over home ground even when losing meant dying. Strike package crossed Alps in clear morning air. Mountains below white and sharp. Beautiful and deadly. Bomber streams struggled through thin air. Engines laboring. Fighters weaving above watching for threats. Germans came up in force. 40 fighters, maybe more. Massive formation attack designed to overwhelm escorts and break through to bombers. Hit from multiple angles simultaneously. Coordinated assault by experienced pilots who knew they were fighting for survival of their country. Reed's flight was on southern flank. Saw Gruppe of Focke-Wulfs climbing toward them in tight formation. Beautiful aircraft, dangerous opponents. Skilled pilots. Reed radioed the 2 trained captains. Single word. Execute. All 3 Mustangs broke formation simultaneously. Dove trailing smoke. Flying erratically. Looking wounded and panicked and vulnerable. Perfect bait for predators who had been killing Americans for years. Focke-Wulfs saw easy kills, rolled in with confidence born from experience. This was what worked. This was how you survived. Attack the weak. Avoid the strong. It became slaughter in ways Germans did not expect until too late. 3 Mustangs whipped around in sequence. Energy exploding back into airframes. Smoke stopping. Engines screaming to full power. Damaged aircraft transforming into fully capable fighters in span of seconds. Germans committed and fast could not stop. Could not slow. Could not turn tight enough. Overshot into firing solutions they did not know existed until they were dying inside them. Reed got 2. First captain got 1. Second captain got 2. 5 Germans down in 90 seconds. Remaining Focke-Wulfs broke off. Scattered in all directions. Confused. Frightened. No longer sure what was real and what was deception. Bomber formation held together. Continued to target. Dropped bombs with precision. Turned for home. Not single B-17 was lost to fighters that day. 0. Statistics that would be noticed by people who measured such things. At debriefing group, Commander Anderson listened to reports. Watched gun camera footage from all 3 aircraft. When it finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then spoke. Said we are teaching this to entire groups starting tomorrow. Every pilot gets briefed on technique. Every pilot practices until proficient or declines to participate. No one forced. But option is available. Those who master it will use it. We document results. We measure effectiveness. We prove this works before submitting to higher headquarters. Within a week, every pilot in 357th Fighter Group had been briefed on energy deception tactics. Some tried it. Some did not. Personal choice, individual risk assessment. But those who did started logging kills at Rates Group had not seen since summer when Germans were less experienced and Americans had numerical advantage. Numbers were compelling. Statistics did not lie. Pilots who used technique survived at higher rates. Shot down more Germans, returned with less damage. Mathematics proving it itself through accumulated evidence. Tactics spread beyond 357th through informal channels. Other groups heard about it. Flight leaders visited Leiston, sat in briefings, took notes, watched gun camera footage, asked questions, took information back to their squadrons, tried it themselves, found it worked if executed properly. By late January, technique was being used across much of 8th Air Force, not officially sanctioned yet, not informal doctrine, but spreading through pilot network that valued results over procedures. What Reed did not know was that he had attracted attention from other side of war, from someone who thought the same way he did. Major Franz Weber, 34 years old, Luftwaffe ace commanding JG-27 Interceptor Squadron. 52 confirmed kills painted on his aircraft. Before war had studied aeronautical engineering at Munich, understood aircraft as systems, thought in terms of mathematics and physics. Analytical mind applied to combat much like Reed's analytical mind. Weber noticed pattern in debriefing reports from his pilots. American Mustangs faking damage, then attacking when Germans committed. Lost 3 good pilots December 23rd to this new tactic. Experienced men. Veterans who had survived years of combat. Did not die from bad luck or superior American skill. Died because Americans had developed systematic counter to standard Luftwaffe doctrine. Weber studied after action reports carefully. Recognized this was not random innovation. Was engineered solution to tactical problem. Some American pilot had analyzed German attack patterns, had identified predictable response to damaged aircraft, had developed deception technique exploiting that predictability, had tested it, had refined it, had taught it to others, was spreading it across theater. This was work of engineering, work of mind that thought like Weber's mind. He began tracking reports, looking for patterns, trying to identify which American unit, which pilot if possible. Found concentration of incidents around 357th Fighter Group based at Leiston. Found references in captured documents to pilot named Reed or Red, hard to tell from German transcription. Described as calculating rather than aggressive, as analytical rather than instinctive. Weber respected this professionally. This was worthy opponent, someone who changed warfare through understanding rather than through superior numbers or equipment. January 1945, Weber led his Staffel intercepting formation heading to Berlin. Spotted Mustang trailing smoke dropping from formation. Recognized immediately this might be new American tactic. Circled high instead of attacking. Watched. Smoke stopped after 30 seconds. Mustang began climbing back toward formation. Confirmed. This was the deception. This was the trap that killed his pilots. Weber rolled in for attack anyway. Wanted to test American who developed this. Wanted to see if pilot was as good as tactics suggested. Reed saw him coming. Did not fake damage this time. Just fought. Clean engagement. Pure energy management. They circled each other at 20,000 feet. Neither could gain decisive advantage. Both too skilled. Both understanding physics too completely. Both respecting margins. Both calculating constantly. Weber broke off after 2 minutes. Low on fuel. Had to return to base or die over enemy territory. But impressed despite trying to kill American. That pilot flew like engineer. Calculated every move. Respected margins perfectly. Was dangerous not because aggressive, but because thought ahead. Anticipated. Understood. Weber made note in his combat log. American Mustang pilot, probably 357th Fighter Group, uses engineered deception tactics based on analysis of Luftwaffe doctrine. Do not engage apparently damaged aircraft without verification. Recommend extreme caution. This pilot is highly skilled and thinks systematically. Weber tried 5 more times over 6 weeks to kill Reed. Never succeeded. Each time Reed either saw trap early or fought to draw. Both survived every encounter. Professional respect developed despite being enemies. Despite trying to kill each other. Both understood the other thought same way. Used same methods. Applied same analytical approach to different sides of same war. War would end eventually. Understanding would remain. Perhaps someday they would meet and discuss the mathematics that kept both alive when so many others died. By late January 1945, energy deception tactics had spread across 8th Air Force through pilot network. Luftwaffe intelligence noticed. Debriefed surviving German pilots. Heard descriptions of Americans faking damage, then attacking. Warnings went out. Do not engage apparently damaged aircraft without careful verification. Maintain altitude advantage. Watch for coordinated deception with multiple aircraft. But in combat, caution was slow. Slow was dead. Germans who hesitated died differently than Germans who attacked but died regardless. Tactic kept working because worked on fundamental psychology. Predators attacked wounded prey. Instinct overrode caution when target looked vulnerable enough. Training reinforced this because attacking damaged aircraft had always been good tactics until Americans reversed it. Changing doctrine required time Luftwaffe no longer had. By February, German pilots were more cautious. But caution cost them initiative, cost them kills, cost them ability to defend airspace. And in 1945, Luftwaffe had no time left for learning curves. Measurable impact was undeniable to anyone who looked at statistics. December 1944, 357th Fighter Group's kill-to-loss ratio jumped from 3:1 to 7:1. Ratio of enemy aircraft destroyed versus friendly aircraft lost. Bomber losses on missions with escort fighters trained in deception tactics dropped by 40%, from 8% average loss rate to under 5%. Data was compiled, analyzed, forwarded to 8th Air Force Headquarters by group commanders who could not ignore results even if they did not fully understand methodology. January brought training memorandum distributed across all fighter groups, titled Tactical Deception in Air-to-Air Engagement. Did not mention read by name, did not give credit to individual. Just described technique, provided guidelines, suggested training methods, made it available for units that wanted to adopt it. Every pilot who read it knew where it came from, knew one analytical captain had changed how Air Force fought through understanding enemy psychology better than enemy understood it themselves. Technique was refined as more pilots used it. Variations developed. Some used terrain, dove toward cloud decks, pulled up at last moment. Others used formations, one aircraft baiting while others set up high for overhead attack. Principle remained same across variations. Exploit aggression through deception. Make enemies' strength into weakness. Use their doctrine against them. Mathematics worked regardless of specific implementation. Luftwaffe adapted slowly because adapting required changing training and doctrine and psychology. Required admitting Americans had developed counter to tactics that worked for years. Required accepting that analytical approach defeated aggressive approach when analysis was done correctly. By February, German pilots were more cautious about attacking damaged aircraft. But caution reduced their effectiveness, made them hesitate when hesitation meant bombers got through, made them second-guess when split-second decisions meant life or death. And in 1945, Luftwaffe was running out of everything that mattered. Fuel, pilots, aircraft, time. Could not afford long learning curve. Could not afford casualties from new American tactics on top of casualties from overwhelming numbers. Weber understood this. Understood war was lost. Understood his job was killing as many Americans as possible before inevitable end. Understood American engineer pilot had made that job harder through thinking clearly about how warfare actually worked at tactical level. Reed's final tally would eventually reach 13 confirmed kills, all but one using tactic he developed. Never named it himself. Other pilots called it playing possum or wounded duck or bait and switch. Official reports listed it as energy deception maneuver. Name did not matter, results mattered. Technique worked, saved lives, changed doctrine, proved that warfare could be improved through systematic analysis of enemy behavior patterns and development of counter-tactics based on that analysis. But story was not finished. War would end, pilots would go home, decades would pass, and eventually Hunter and Hunted would meet not as enemies, but as engineers who respected what the other had accomplished, who understood that both had survived through thinking rather than through luck, who recognized that understanding defeated courage when both were tested against same physics and same mathematics governing aerial combat at 20,000 feet over winter Germany. March 1945 brought end to Reed's combat tour. 52 missions logged, 13 confirmed kills, never lost a wingman, never took serious battle damage. Statistical anomaly in war where statistics usually measure death. He was offered promotion to major, offered training command position, teaching new pilots his methods, could stay in England, could continue fighting, could add more kills to his tally, could become an ace if that mattered. He declined politely but firmly, told Colonel Anderson he wanted to go home, wanted to finish engineering degree interrupted by war, wanted to marry Catherine who had waited 2 years writing letters that got shorter as worry grew longer, wanted to design tractors or bridges or anything that built instead of destroyed. Anderson did not argue, understood that some men were fighters for duration only, that war would end and those men would return to being whatever they were before uniform made them killers. Thanked Reed for service, for innovation, for changing how Air Force fought. Said his methods would outlive them both. Before leaving England, Reed was asked to brief new fighter groups arriving from states. Young pilots fresh from training, eager and scared in ways they tried to hide. He stood in front of 100 men and explained energy, deception tactics in engineers' precise language. Showed diagrams, described psychology, walked through execution step by step. Some listened intently, others looked skeptical. Few understood that quiet captain, talking about mathematics, had killed 13 Germans and lived when thousands of others died. At end, one young lieutenant raised hand, asked if Reed was ever scared the tactic would not work, if he worried Germans would see through deception and kill him. Reed paused, considered question seriously, said yes, every single time. Fear was a natural response to mortal danger. But fear could not make decisions, could not override analysis. Either physics was sound or it was not. Either mathematics worked or it did not. He had calculated correctly, had tested thoroughly, had executed precisely. Fear existed alongside certainty. Both were real. Certainty just mattered more when your life depended on being right. Returned to United States in spring 1945. Landed in New York Harbor, seeing Statue of Liberty from troop ship deck. America looked different after 2 years of Europe burning. Looked impossibly clean, impossibly safe, impossibly normal. His mother Helen met him at train station in Decatur. She had aged, hair grayer, face more lined, but eyes still sharp with mathematics teacher's precision. Hugged him longer than either was comfortable with. Said simply, "You came home." Many did not. He said, "I calculated carefully." She said, "Your father would understand that. I am just grateful mathematics worked." Brooklyn College readmitted him for fall semester 1945. Finished mechanical engineering degree, spring 1946. Grades excellent despite 2-year interruption. Professors asked about war occasionally. He deflected politely. Said he flew fighters, protected bombers, came home. Did not mention kills or tactics or changing doctrine. That was different life, different version of himself. Now he was engineering student again, solving problems with slide rule not guns, designing systems that created instead of destroyed. Married Catherine Mitchell, June 1946 in small ceremony. His mother present, Catherine's parents. Few former squadron mates who had survived and stayed in contact. Parker came from Iowa. Harrison came from Texas. Morrison sent telegram from California where he was working in aircraft factory. No grand celebration, no dramatic speeches, just quiet acknowledgement that they had survived separately and could now build lives together. Reception was held in church basement, cake and coffee, veterans talking quietly about missions they remembered and friends they mourned. Catherine's chemistry colleagues trying to make conversation with men who had killed people professionally. Reed stood slightly apart watching, thinking about Chen, who should have been there, thinking about Germans he killed who had their own Catherines waiting, who waited forever. War's mathematics were brutal. Survival meant someone else died. Coming home meant someone else did not. No equation balanced that. John Deere hired him 1947 designing hydraulic systems for farm equipment. Perfect application of engineering principles, learned understanding aircraft under stress. Hydraulics failed predictably if you understood physics. Could be designed to tolerate abuse if you calculated loads correctly. Spent 30 years making tractors and combines more reliable. Work that mattered to farmers. Work that fed people instead of killing them. Quiet satisfaction in seeing designs work season after season. Had 3 children with Catherine. 2 daughters and son. Raised them in house with yard in Moline, Illinois. Normal American life war had been fought to preserve. Rarely spoke about combat at dinner table. When children asked, he said he flew fighters in Europe, protected bombers, came home when it ended. They pushed for details. He deflected, said real heroes were ones who did not come back. Men in cemeteries in France and Belgium deserved recognition, not survivors who got lucky with mathematics, but kept Chen's flight logs in desk drawer, kept his own mission logs, kept notebook filled with diagrams and calculations from 1944. Sometimes late at night would pull them out, read through them. Remember being 23 and scared and calculating whether physics would keep him alive one more mission. Remember friends who died. Remember Germans who died. Remember that war was applied mathematics with consequences, measured in lives, not abstract numbers. 1953 brought unexpected letter from Air Force Academy, new institution being established in Colorado Springs, training next generation of officers and pilots, needed instructors for tactics course. Someone had recommended Reed. Would he consider teaching one semester annually, sharing his experience with cadets, helping develop curriculum for air combat tactics based on analytical approach rather than just aggression? He was reluctant initially, told Catherine he was not comfortable teaching killing. She said they are not asking you to teach killing. They are asking you to teach survival through understanding. Different thing entirely. He thought about that, realized she was right, accepted offer. Taught one semester per year from 1953 through 1958. 5 years of cadets who initially saw engineering professor, not fighter pilot. First day each year was same. Would walk into classroom wearing civilian clothes. Young cadets expecting warrior would see accountant. Disappointment visible on faces. Then he would put first equation on blackboard. Energy state calculations. Overshoot geometry. Turn radius versus velocity. Would explain that combat was physics with consequences. That understanding physics lets you predict outcomes. That prediction lets you control engagements. That control meant survival. One cadet always asked about fear. Reed's answer never varied. Fear is natural, but cannot let fear make decisions. Fear wants you to panic, to react without thinking, to follow instinct that gets you killed against thinking enemy. Must override fear with calculation, with systematic analysis, with trust in mathematics that does not care about emotion. Another cadet would ask about kills. Reed would say, kills are not measure of success. Survival is measure. Bringing your wingman home is measure. Completing mission without loss is measure. If you kill enemy in process, that is byproduct of good tactics, not goal itself. Influenced entire generation of fighter pilots through those 5 years. Many became instructors themselves. Spread understanding that combat effectiveness came from systematic thinking, not just courage. By 1960, energy deception tactics Reed developed were standard curriculum at all fighter weapons schools. Origin stories sometimes lost in bureaucratic distance, but principles remained. Test assumptions, calculate margins, execute within limits. Trust physics, not emotions. 1965 brought Aviation Engineering Conference in Munich, Germany. Reed attended presenting paper on hydraulic systems analysis, using engineering principles developed partly from understanding aircraft systems under extreme stress. Room full of professionals discussing load factors and failure modes. After his presentation, man approached. Older, gray hair, spoke with German accent that was educated and precise. Said, Captain Reed, I am Franz Weber, former Luftwaffe Major JG-27. I tried to kill you 6 times in early 1945. Never succeeded. Your flying was too precise. Your tactics too calculated. I became professionally obsessed with understanding how you thought. Reed looked at him carefully. Saw former enemy 20 years after war ended. Saw fellow engineer. Said Major Weber, I remember you. Only German pilot who never took the bait, who circled high and watched, who fought clean when we engaged. Professional to professional. Weber smiled slightly. Said after war, I returned to Munich. Studied aeronautical engineering as I had planned before war interrupted. Became aerospace engineer. Worked on civilian aircraft design. Studied captured American documents about tactical innovations from 1944 and 1945. Found references to techniques developed by 357th Fighter Group. Recognized immediately this was you. The analytical American who made me cautious. The engineer who thought like engineer, not like warrior. They talked for 6 hours that afternoon in hotel conference room away from other attendees. About calculations made under fire when there was no time to consult manuals or ask for guidance. About understanding aircraft completely enough to fly them beyond official limitations safely. About training others to think systematically under pressure when instinct said panic. About how engineering mind applied to combat produced results neither pure engineering nor pure combat training achieved alone. Weber said your tactics changed how I thought about warfare. Made me realize aggression without analysis was suicide when facing thinking opponent. I applied lessons after war, teaching young engineers to question assumptions, to test hypotheses, to respect data over emotion. You were a better teacher than you knew. Reed said you taught me that enemy pilots could be professionals, that you could try to kill someone and still respect their skill. That war was temporary, but principles were permanent. Weber introduced his wife Anna, school teacher from Munich, explained how after war he worked rebuilding Germany through engineering, not fighting. Reed shared photographs of Catherine and 3 children now grown. Both men understood they had survived because they calculated when others reacted. War had separated them. Engineering united them. Peace made friendship possible in ways combat never could. They became professional colleagues after that conference, corresponded regularly about aviation design challenges, met at subsequent engineering conferences, discussed approaches to problems that transcended their history as enemies. Weber invited Reed to his home in Munich, showed aircraft designs he was working on, civilian transports built using principles learned from military work. Reed shared his complete mission logs without reservation, both understanding that knowledge should be shared, that engineering transcended nationality and history and old hatreds. Weber said once over beer in Munich Gasthaus that he respected Reed more than most men he had known, said trying to kill someone and failing because they calculated better taught humility and admiration simultaneously. That recognition of superior analytical approach was highest compliment one engineer could give another. Reed said similar, that Weber's refusal to take obvious bait showed discipline and intelligence that saved Weber's life repeatedly, that both had survived through thinking rather than through luck. 1972 brought unexpected visitor to Reed's home in Molina. He was 61 years old, retired from John Deere, consulting occasionally on engineering projects. Doorbell rang on Saturday afternoon. Opened door to see Air Force captain in dress uniform. Young man, mid-20s, stood at attention on front porch. Said, "Sir, my name is Captain Michael Parker. My father was your wingman, Lieutenant James Parker. He died last year. Cancer. Before he died, he told me about December 19th, 1944, about mission over Castle, about you faking damage and getting 4 kills in 2 minutes, about how you taught him that surviving required thinking, not just reacting." Reed invited him in, offered coffee, sat in the living room that smelled like old wood and engineering textbooks. Captain Parker continued. He said you saved his life multiple times, not by shooting Germans, but by showing him how to see battles before they happened, how to calculate when others panicked, how to survive through understanding. He flew 3 tours in Vietnam, came home because he remembered your lessons, because you taught him that best fight is one enemy does not know he is in until it is over. Said, I am F-4 Phantom pilot, flying out of Udorn, Thailand. We study your tactics and training. We use variations of energy deception against North Vietnamese MiGs. Your mathematics works in jet age, same as propeller age. Physics does not change. Understanding still matters most. My father's entire family exists because you taught him to think. 3 children, 7 grandchildren, all because one captain understood combat was applied mathematics. Reed was deeply moved in ways he did not show easily, had not known Parker survived war, had not maintained regular contact with crew members after 1945, understood survivors scattered, built lives, moved forward from trauma. But hearing that his wingman had spoken about missions before dying meant something profound, meant calculations mattered beyond statistics and reports, meant lives were changed across generations, meant teaching spread through families, not just through military channels. Said your father was excellent pilot because he learned to think systematically, to question assumptions, to calculate instead of react. He survived because he stopped being predictable, because he understood that warfare rewards those who see patterns others miss. Tell his grandchildren their grandfather mattered greatly. That understanding saves lives across generations. That mathematics works when applied with precision and courage together. Captain Parker stood to leave, shook Reed's hand, said, Sir, you are legend in fighter community, even if your name is not widely known outside it. Your methods are taught at every fighter weapon school. Your tactics are studied at every fighter squadron. You changed how we fight, changed how we survive, changed how we think about combat at fundamental level. Thank you for that. Thank you for my father. Thank you for my family existing. After he left, Reed sat in the living room for a long time. Catherine found him there, asked what was wrong. He said nothing is wrong, everything is right. Just thinking about how mathematics ripples forward through time. How understanding taught to one young pilot in 1944 saved that pilot's life, which created family, which produced another pilot who is now using same principles over Vietnam. How knowledge spreads, how teaching matters, how one small innovation can cascade through decades if it is based on truth that does not change. 1982 brought interview with aviation historian researching 357th Fighter Group. Reed was 71, agreed to interview reluctantly, answered questions carefully with same methodical clarity he brought to combat. Historian asked if he considered himself hero. Reed said no, said he was pilot who paid attention, who thought systematically, who applied engineering principles to tactical problems. Heroes were men who threw themselves on grenades to save others. He just calculated better than opponents. Historian asked what he learned from war. Reed paused, considering questions seriously, then said that most dangerous enemy is predictability, yours or theirs. That survival is not about being fearless. It is about being rational when rationality is hard. That courage without understanding gets people killed. That understanding without courage achieves nothing. That both together properly applied can change outcomes even when odds seem impossible. Interview was published in Small Aviation Journal. 14 people read it. But those 14 included instructors at fighter weapon schools, included historians documenting tactical evolution, included pilots who recognized that quiet engineer from Illinois had articulated something important about how warfare actually worked versus how people romantically imagined it worked. 1991 brought the end. Reed died at age 70, heart failure, peaceful death at home with Catherine present, life fully lived, contributions made. Legacy established even if not widely recognized. New York Times obituary mentioned his work at John Deere and his service in World War II. Did not mention 13 kills. Did not mention tactic that changed how Air Force fought. Did not mention innovations still being taught to pilots 50 years after he developed them. Newspapers measure fame, not impact. Impact is harder to quantify. Spreads invisibly through changed minds and saved lives. Funeral at Arlington National Cemetery with military honors. Flag-draped coffin. Honor guards standing in precise formation. 3 volleys of rifle fire echoing across cemetery where thousands of warriors rested. Taps played by bugler whose notes carried across morning that was cold and clear like December day over Germany half-century before. Catherine stood supported by their children. Grandchildren who barely knew grandfather were present because family obligations required attendance. But also something unusual arranged by Air Force at request of surviving pilots and their families. 4 F-15 Eagles flew over the cemetery in tight formation. Modern fighters demonstrating precision that honored fighter pilots from earlier war. Formation held perfect, then deliberately broke. 3 Eagles continued on course. 4th pulled away, dropped low, began trailing smoke from smoke generator installed specifically for this tribute. Aircraft wallowing, looking damaged, looking vulnerable. Then reversal. Smoke stopped. Engine roared to full power. F-15 snapped into vertical climb. Rolled, rejoined formation with precision that demonstrated complete control throughout entire maneuver. Wounded duck maneuver performed as tribute to man who invented it. Missing man formation combined with tactical innovation that was Reed's legacy. Those who understood gasped. Those who did not wondered what they had just witnessed. Captain Parker's son gave eulogy standing at podium. Now Lieutenant Colonel. Commanded fighter squadron. Represented 3rd generation of pilots influenced by Reed's methods. Said my grandfather told my father, and my father told me that Captain Reed saved his life 6 times in 1944. Saved it by teaching calculation defeats panic, by showing understanding matters more than courage alone, by proving mathematics works under pressure when applied correctly. Said my grandfather lived 46 years after war, raised 4 children, saw 11 grandchildren before cancer took him, lived full and productive life because one pilot did mathematics correctly one winter morning over Germany, because one engineer proved thinking saves lives as surely as shooting does. 3 generations of our family exist because Captain Reed calculated fuel and thrust and weight and distance correctly, because he proved numbers worked, because he trusted mathematics more than fear. Anderson attended, 90 years old, frail but present, wheelchair bound but mentally sharp, said afterward to assembled veterans and family members, "I doubted him initially, told him innovation meant death, that procedures existed for good reasons, that individual cleverness was less reliable than institutional wisdom. He proved me wrong using evidence I could not deny. Changed how I thought about leadership, about innovation, about trusting people who think differently. Best decision I made was documenting his methods instead of suppressing them." Morrison's son attended, brought his father's maintenance logs from 1944, original documents showing every repair, every tolerance check, every note Morrison made about supporting Reed's calculated risks through precision maintenance. Said my father believed in Captain Reed absolutely. Maintained his aircraft to standards beyond normal because understood precision made impossible possible. They were partnership, pilot who calculated, mechanic who enabled, both understanding that excellence in one area required excellence in other. Donating these logs to Air Force Museum, evidence of how 2 men changed warfare through mutual respect and shared commitment to precision. Catherine spoke briefly, age 80, voice still strong, said Mike never talked much about war in normal conversation. But sometimes late at night when sleep would not come, he would tell me about the calculations, about fuel and thrust and weight, about understanding aircraft so completely you knew what it could do before it did it, about Chen, who died following procedures, about proving that numbers worked when fear said they would not. Said he was not warrior in traditional sense, was engineer who happened to fly fighters, calculator who happened to survive, teacher who happened to change how thousands of others thought about combat. He applied engineering to survival, applied mathematics to margins, applied clear thinking to chaos. He proved understanding defeated fear when understanding was complete and calculations were precise. That was who he was. That was his gift. That was his legacy. Headstone was simple. Name, rank, dates, Distinguished Service Cross mentioned. No technical diagrams, no calculations engraved in marble, just facts presented plainly as he would have preferred. But Headstone told smallest part of story. Real story was written in Air Force manuals teaching his methods, in engineering textbooks analyzing his calculations, in thousands of pilots who learned understanding aircraft completely meant surviving, in families existing because someone calculated instead of panicked during critical moments. His children kept his engineering notebooks, sometimes read notes on hydraulic systems, found annotations about aircraft performance hidden among tractor designs, about energy states and geometry, about how understanding completely changed what was possible. His granddaughter studying aerospace engineering asked what he was like. Catherine said he was quiet, precise, believed mathematics did not lie when calculated correctly. That fear was variable, not constant. That thinking clearly under pressure changed everything. That warfare rewarded those who understood over those who just reacted. Modern fighter pilots still learn energy deception maneuver, though name has changed multiple times through bureaucratic evolution, still taught at all fighter weapons schools, still practiced against aggressor squadrons, still used in training scenarios, still saves lives when pilot understands opponent's psychology well enough to exploit predictable responses. Reed's mathematics proven across 80 years of aerial combat, in World War II, in Korea, in Vietnam, in Gulf Wars, in every engagement where pilot thinks instead of just reacts, where calculation defeats panic, where understanding changes outcomes. His legacy is not fame, not recognition beyond small community of military historians and aviation enthusiasts, but fundamental change in how fighter pilots approach survival. Change so complete it became invisible through incorporation into standard doctrine. Change saving thousands of lives across generations. Change demonstrating understanding. Defeats fear when understanding is complete and calculation is precise. In climate-controlled archive at Air Force Museum in Ohio, his notebooks rest in acid-free boxes. Researchers occasionally request them. Open yellowed pages covered with mechanical pencil marks, diagrams showing attack angles and energy states, calculations of closure rates and turn radii. The arithmetic of aerial predation written in engineers' careful, precise hand. Logic is still sound. Mathematics still works. Physics has not changed. Understanding still matters most. New instructors teaching tactics sometimes do not know where energy deception originated. Know it works because has worked for 80 years. Know it is taught because saves lives. Origin becomes less important than application. Technique matters more than inventor. Results matter more than recognition. Reed would understand this, would approve. Was never about personal glory. Was about proving mathematics worked. About saving lives through understanding. About changing warfare through systematic analysis rather than through courage alone. His grave at Arlington receives occasional visitors, veterans who flew in different wars using methods he pioneered, instructors who teach tactics he developed, engineers who appreciate analytical approach he applied to problems others solved through aggression. They leave challenge coins, leave flight pins, leave slide rules and calculators, leave notes saying thank you for proving understanding matters. Thank you for showing calculation defeats panic. Thank you for demonstrating mathematics saves lives. The sky above Arlington is peaceful now. No fighters circling, no contrails marking combat, no young men calculating whether physics will keep them alive, one more mission. But principles remain. Understanding defeats fear when understanding is complete. Calculation defeats panic when calculation is precise. Mathematics works when applied correctly under pressure. Engineering mind applied to warfare produces results courage alone cannot achieve. Thomas Reed changed war not with speeches or medals or fame, changed it with notebook and slide rule, and willingness to think differently when thinking differently meant survival. Changed it by watching when others fought, by calculating when others reacted, by understanding completely when others understood partially. Changed it by proving that quiet analytical approach could be more lethal than aggressive traditional approach, when both were tested against same enemy following same doctrine. Squadron thought he was coward. Enemy thought he was prey. Both were catastrophically wrong. And in 2 minutes over Germany in December 1944, 13 Luftwaffe pilots learned hardest lesson of aerial warfare. That most dangerous opponent is not strongest or fastest or most aggressive, is one who makes you believe you have already won, is one who understands your psychology better than you understand it yourself, is one who turns your strength into weakness through calculation you never saw coming until you were falling from sky, wondering what just happened. His legacy lives in every fighter pilot who learns to think before shooting, who calculates before committing, who understands the enemy completely before engaging, who survives through intelligence rather than through luck, who comes home to family because used brain as weapon more effectively than used guns. That is immortality. That is victory. That is what matters when mathematics is applied correctly to problems, where being wrong means dying and being right means living to teach others so they can live too. The wounded duck flies still in training exercises worldwide. Smoke trails, aircraft wobbles, predators close for easy kill. Then reversal, energy explodes. Hunters become hunted. Training becomes real as students learn viscerally what Reed proved mathematically. That understanding changes everything. That calculation defeats instinct. That engineering mind wins wars when warriors think warfare requires only courage. Both matter, both necessary. But understanding makes courage effective rather than just noble, makes survival probable rather than just possible, makes victory achievable through method rather than through miracle. And somewhere in cold, clear sky over Germany, phantom of young captain still flies calculated patterns, still baits aggressive opponents, still proves mathematics works when fear says run, still teaches through example that survives across generations, still demonstrates that some warriors win through strength while others win through understanding. And that understanding, properly applied, can be more lethal, more lasting, more important than any amount of strength, courage, or aggression combined. That is Thomas Reed's legacy. That is Wounded Duck's eternal flight. That is why mathematics matters when lives depend on being right.